My true story from North Carolina. I asked my son when the wedding is, and my daughter-in-law said, "We got married yesterday." There she was, standing in my kitchen, wearing my grandmother's pearl necklace that I'd been saving for her wedding day for months. And she casually told me they'd already gotten married. But what she didn't know was that I'd just discovered the real reason they kept me out of the most important day of my son's life. And honey, let me tell you, it would change everything between us forever. But let me start from the beginning, because this story broke my heart before it healed it. Welcome back to Granny Dorothy's Stories. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Your support truly encourages me to continue sharing these incredible tales with you. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from my sweethearts around the world. My name is Anna Thompson, and I'm 58 years old. 2 years ago, I lost my husband Tom to a sudden heart attack, and since then my son Ben has been everything to me. He's 28, works in finance, and he's all the family I have left in this world. When he introduced me to Jessica about 2 years ago, I was over the moon. Finally, someone who might give me grandchildren, someone who could help fill the empty spaces in our little family. Jessica seemed perfect for him. She was 26, worked as a nurse, had this sweet smile, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. You have to understand, after losing Tom, I was desperate to feel like I still had a family, like there was still joy and celebration ahead of us. When Ben proposed to Jessica last Christmas, I cried harder than I had since Tom's funeral. But these were happy tears. Tears of relief that life was moving forward, that there would be new memories to make. And when they asked me to help plan the wedding, I thought I was the luckiest mother-in-law in the world. I threw myself into that wedding planning like my life depended on it. I own a small catering business here in town, something I built from nothing after Tom passed, and I'd always dreamed of catering my son's wedding. We spent hours together, Jessica and I, looking at flowers, tasting cakes, and touring venues. I felt like I was getting the daughter I never had. We picked out this beautiful venue by the lake, scheduled for September 15th. I remember the day we put down the deposit because Jessica seemed a little uncomfortable about the cost, but I told her not to worry, that this was my gift to them. This was going to be the wedding of her dreams. We went dress shopping together in June. I'll never forget watching her try on that gorgeous ivory gown with the lace sleeves. She looked like an angel, and when she teared up looking at herself in the mirror, I teared up too. We picked out bridesmaid dresses, chose the menu, and selected flowers. Every weekend was another wedding task, and I loved every minute of it. But around July, things started to feel different. Jessica would cancel our planning sessions, saying she was tired from work. Ben seemed distant when I'd call to discuss wedding details. When I'd ask about guest count or seating arrangements, they'd get vague and tell me they were still figuring things out. I told myself they were just stressed. Planning a wedding is overwhelming, especially when you're both working full-time. I kept moving forward with the plans, confirming vendors, and finalizing details. After all, someone had to keep things organized, right? Then came August. Ben started screening my calls. When I'd suggest we meet to discuss the rehearsal dinner, he'd say he was too busy with a work project. Jessica stopped responding to my texts about final head count and song choices. I started to feel like I was planning a wedding for 2 people who weren't even interested in their own event. But I pushed through because I loved them, and I knew they were just overwhelmed. I kept telling myself that on their wedding day, they'd be grateful for everything I'd done to make it perfect. The weekend before Labor Day, I decided to surprise them. I'd been working on a special wedding favoring little photo frames with pictures of Tom and Ben from when Ben was little, so Tom could be part of their special day somehow. I drove over to their apartment with a box of these frames, so excited to show them. I used my spare key to get in, calling out that it was just me. That's when I heard Jessica's voice from the kitchen, and what she said stopped me cold in the hallway. She was on the phone with someone, and she said, "No, Mom, we're not telling her yet. Anna doesn't know we already did it at City Hall last week. She'll lose her mind when she finds out all her planning was for nothing." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. "Already did it?" Already did what? Got married? My son got married without telling me? I stood there in that hallway, holding those photo frames, feeling like my entire world was crumbling. They got married without me. My only child, my son who I raised by myself after Tom died when he was just a teenager, got married and didn't tell me. I quietly set down the frames and left without saying anything. I drove home in a complete daze, trying to process what I'd heard. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe she was talking about something else. But deep down, I knew exactly what I'd heard. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every conversation we'd had about the wedding, looking for signs I'd missed. How long had they been lying to me? How long had I been planning a fake wedding while they'd already had a real one without me? The next morning, Tuesday after Labor Day, Jessica showed up at my house like nothing had happened. She was wearing jeans and a casual sweater, but around her neck was my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one I'd given her specifically to wear on her wedding day. "Hi, Anna," she said cheerfully, walking into my kitchen like she always did. "I brought coffee from that little place you like." I stared at her, at my grandmother's necklace sitting on her throat, and I felt this rage building inside me like nothing I'd ever experienced. "That's a beautiful necklace," I said carefully. "Special occasion?" She touched it absently. "Oh, this? I just felt like wearing something pretty today." Something inside me snapped. "Jessica," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. When is the wedding?" She froze, her hand still on the necklace. Her face went pale, and I watched her trying to figure out what to say. "Well, September 15th, like we planned." "Jessica," my voice is harder now. "When is the wedding?" She looked at me for a long moment, and then her shoulders sagged like she was deflating. "We got married yesterday," she whispered. "Yesterday. Not last week like I'd overheard, but yesterday. They'd gotten married on a Monday, like it was nothing more important than renewing their car registration." "Yesterday," I repeated, trying to make sense of the word. "It was just a small thing at City Hall. We didn't want a big fuss." I didn't want a big fuss. After months of planning their dream wedding, after dress shopping and cake tastings and vendor meetings, afterwards I'd put my heart and soul and my business reputation on the line to give them something beautiful. "You didn't want a big fuss," I said slowly, "so you got married without telling me and then came to my house wearing my grandmother's necklace like nothing happened." "Anna, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why my son got married and I wasn't invited? Can you explain why I've been planning a wedding for two people who are already married? Can you explain why you're wearing family jewelry to celebrate a marriage I wasn't allowed to witness?" She started crying then, but I was beyond caring about her tears. "Where's Ben?" I demanded. "He's at work. Anna, please, let me explain." "Call him. Tell him to come here. Now." She fumbled for her phone with shaking hands and called Ben. I could hear his voice when he answered, cheerful and unsuspecting. "Hey babe, what's up?" "Ben, I'm at your mom's house, and she knows." The line went quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. "Knows what?" he finally said, but his voice had changed completely. "About yesterday, about us getting married." Another long pause. "I'll be right there." While we waited for Ben, Jessica tried to explain, but every word just made it worse. "We were going to tell you after we got back from our honeymoon." "What honeymoon? You didn't tell me you were going on a honeymoon." "Just a long weekend in the mountains, nothing fancy." "Nothing fancy. My son went on his honeymoon and I didn't even know he was married." "Anna, you have to understand we didn't plan for it to happen this way." "Then, how did it happen, Jessica? How do you accidentally get married without telling anyone?" She couldn't answer that, and we sat in horrible silence until Ben walked in. He looked guilty and defensive at the same time, like a teenager who'd been caught sneaking out. "Mom," he started. "Don't." I held up my hand. "Just don't. I need you to explain to me how my son, my only child, got married yesterday and I had to find out by accident. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, but it did happen like this, so explain it." He sat down heavily at my kitchen table, running his hands through his hair the way he used to when he was little and in trouble. We went to City Hall yesterday to get some paperwork notarized for the house we're trying to buy, and they had a cancellation for a wedding ceremony, and Jessica said, wouldn't it be romantic if we just did it right then? So you did? So we did. I looked at both of them sitting at my table, these two people I'd loved and trusted and planned a beautiful wedding for. And I felt something inside me just break. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, get out of my house. Anna, please let us explain. There's nothing to explain, Jessica. You got married without me. My son chose to exclude me from the most important day of his life. There's nothing left to explain. Ben tried to argue, but I wasn't listening anymore. I walked to the front door and held it open until they left, Jessica still wearing my grandmother's necklace. After they were gone, I called every vendor we'd booked for September 15th and canceled everything. The venue, the florist, the DJ, the photographer. Thousands of dollars in deposits were lost, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to pretend to plan a fake wedding for two people who were already married. When the venue coordinator asked why I was canceling, I told her the truth. Because they got married yesterday and forgot to tell me. She was shocked into silence, and then she said something that made me cry. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. That must be devastating. It was devastating. It was the worst betrayal I'd ever experienced, worse even than losing Tom, because Tom didn't choose to leave me. For 3 days, I didn't answer my phone. Ben called dozens of times, leaving voicemails that started apologetic and got increasingly frustrated. Mom, you're being ridiculous. We were going to tell you. Mom, pick up the phone. We need to talk about this like adults. Mom, Jessica is crying all the time because you won't talk to us. This is getting out of hand. Jessica sent text after text. I'm sorry. Please call me. I know you're hurt, but we love you. I never meant for it to happen this way. On Thursday, my friend Carol from church came over and found me still in my pajamas, surrounded by wedding planning materials I couldn't bring myself to throw away. Anna, honey, you look awful. What happened? I told her everything, and she listened with her mouth hanging open. They did what now? Got married, Monday. At City Hall. Didn't tell me. After all the planning you've been doing? After all the planning I've been doing. Carol shook her head. That boy has lost his mind. And that girl, I never did trust someone who smiled that much. But as the days passed, I started wondering if there was more to the story. Why would they exclude me so deliberately? Ben and I had always been close. Even during his teenage years when he was angry about his father's death, we'd been able to talk through our problems. The following Monday, exactly a week after their secret wedding, I drove to Ben's office. I figured if he wouldn't answer my calls, he couldn't avoid me at work. He looked surprised to see me, but not happy. Mom, this isn't the place. Then where is the place, Ben? Because you won't answer my calls and you won't come to my house. He sighed and led me to a small conference room. Why? I asked him straight out. Why did you exclude me from your wedding? He was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. Because every time we tried to plan something the way we wanted it, you took over and made it about what you wanted instead. That hit me like a slap. What do you mean? The venue, Mom. We wanted something small and intimate, maybe 20 people. You picked that huge place by the lake that holds 200. I thought you'd want something beautiful. The menu, we wanted simple food, maybe just appetizers and cake. You planned a 5-course dinner. I wanted it to be special. The guest list. We gave you 15 names of people we wanted there. You invited 60 of your friends from church and the business association. I started to defend myself, but he wasn't finished. The dress, the flowers, the music, the decorations. Mom, at some point we realized we weren't planning our wedding anymore. We were planning your fantasy wedding for us. I felt like he'd knocked the wind out of me. I was trying to make it perfect for you. But it wasn't what we wanted. And every time we tried to tell you that, you'd get upset and say you were just trying to help, that you wanted it to be beautiful, that Dad would have wanted us to have something special. Your father would have wanted that. Maybe. But Dad's gone, Mom, and this was supposed to be our day, not his memory's day. I started crying then, not the angry tears I'd been crying all week, but the deep, painful tears of someone who's just realized they've been completely wrong about everything. I thought you wanted my help. We did want your help. But we wanted your help planning our wedding, not your wedding for us. We sat in that conference room while I cried, and Ben looked miserable. I'm sorry, I finally whispered. I'm sorry too, Mom. We should have been more direct with you instead of just going behind your back. Why didn't you just tell me I was taking over? Because you were so excited, and because after Dad died you seemed so sad all the time and planning the wedding made you happy. We didn't want to take that away from you. So instead you took yourselves away from me. We didn't mean to. It just happened. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and I saw how tired he was, how stressed and guilty and torn he looked. Ben, I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. Okay. Is there more? Some other reason you didn't want me at your wedding? He hesitated, and I knew there was. What is it? Mom, Jessica's pregnant. Of all the things I'd been prepared to hear, that wasn't one of them. She's pregnant? About 3 months along. We found out in June. 3 months. That's why you've been avoiding wedding planning. We knew if we told you about the baby, you'd want to rush the wedding, make it all about becoming a grandmother, invite everyone we know to celebrate the pregnancy. So you hid it from me. We wanted to get married quietly, just the two of us, and then tell you about everything together after we'd figured out how to handle it. I sat there trying to process this information. My son was married and I was going to be a grandmother, and I'd found out about both by accident. Who else knows? About the wedding or the pregnancy? Either. Both. Jessica's mom knows about both. Jessica's mom knows? She was our witness at City Hall. That felt like another punch to the stomach. Jessica's mom, who she barely talks to, was at your wedding, but I wasn't. Mom, the woman who abandoned her when she was 15 got to watch her get married, but I didn't. It wasn't about choosing her over you. Then what was it about, David? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you chose everyone over me. He was quiet again, and I could see him struggling with something. What else? I asked. What else aren't you telling me? Jessica didn't want a big wedding because she can't afford one. What do you mean? I was paying for everything. That's exactly what she means. She comes from nothing, Mom. Her family has no money, she's been putting herself through nursing school, she's got student loans and credit card debt, and she works 2 jobs just to make ends meet. I don't understand what that has to do with anything. She didn't want you paying for everything because she was embarrassed. She wanted to be able to contribute something to her own wedding, but she couldn't afford to match what you were spending. I thought about all those times Jessica had seemed uncomfortable when I'd made expensive suggestions, all the times she'd suggested we look at cheaper alternatives. She tried to tell you, Ben continued. Remember when she suggested we have the reception at the community center instead of the country club? Remember when she said maybe we could do a barbecue instead of a sit-down dinner? I did remember. And I remembered how I dismissed those suggestions, insisting that we could do better, that she deserved something elegant. I thought I was being generous. You were being generous, but you were also making her feel like nothing she could offer was good enough. That's not what I meant. I know it's not what you meant, but it's how she felt. She felt like she was marrying into this family where money was no object and she had nothing to bring to the table. She brought herself. She brought you happiness. That's everything. But she didn't see it that way. She felt like a charity case. I thought about Jessica, working 2 jobs, trying to put herself through school, coming from a family that had abandoned her. And here I was, throwing money at her wedding like it was nothing, making her feel small and inadequate. Oh God, I whispered. What have I done? Mom, you were trying to be kind. But Jessica, she's proud. She has been independent her whole life, and suddenly here's this future mother-in-law taking over everything and making her feel like a guest at her own wedding. Is that why her mother was there instead of me? Because at least her mother couldn't make her feel poor? Her mother came because Jessica called her crying after our last big fight about the wedding costs. She drove down from Portland to support Jessica, and she was the only family Jessica felt like she could ask to be there without feeling judged. I sat there absorbing all of this information, feeling smaller and more ashamed with every revelation. I ruined everything, didn't I? You didn't ruin everything, but you made it really hard for us to feel like we had any control over our own lives. If you're watching this and you've ever been planning something special for someone you love, let me ask you something. Have you actually asked them what they want? Or are you just giving them what you think they should want? Because I learned the hard way that those are two very different things. We talked for another hour in that conference room, and Ben told me things that broke my heart. How Jessica had panic attacks about the wedding costs. How they'd fought about whether to just elope because the planning had become so stressful. How they'd both felt trapped between disappointing me and having the wedding they actually wanted. I never meant for any of this to happen, I told him. I know, Mom, and we never meant to hurt you. We just didn't know how to stop the train once it got moving. When I finally left Ben's office, I felt like I'd been put through a blender. Everything I thought I knew about the situation was wrong. I wasn't the victim of their betrayal. I was the cause of their desperation. That night, I did something I should have done months earlier. I sat down and really thought about what Jessica and Ben had actually said they wanted for their wedding. Simple, small, intimate, meaningful. Instead, I'd planned something that was elaborate, large, public, and expensive. I'd been so busy trying to give them something beautiful that I'd never stopped to ask if it was something they'd enjoy. The next day, I called Jessica's work. She was working at the hospital, and I asked the nurse who answered if she could give Jessica a message. Could you please tell her that Anna called, and I'd like to invite her to lunch tomorrow if she's free? And could you tell her I said I'm sorry? Jessica called me back that evening. Anna, you don't need to apologize. I should have been more honest with you. No, honey, I should have listened better. Can we meet for lunch tomorrow? I think we have a lot to talk about. We met at a little cafe downtown, and I could see that Jessica had been crying as much as I had. She looked exhausted and stressed, and she kept twisting her wedding ring, which I noticed was a simple gold band, not the elaborate diamond set we'd looked at together. I'm sorry, were the first words out of my mouth when she sat down. I'm sorry too, she said immediately. No, let me say this first. Jessica, I took over your wedding. I turned it into something you didn't want, and then I made you feel like you couldn't tell me that without hurting my feelings. She started crying right there in the cafe. I did want to tell you, but you were so excited, and Ben said you'd been so sad since his father died. And I didn't want to be the reason you were sad again. Honey, I was sad because I was lonely, not because of anything you did. And I was so excited about the wedding because it meant I was getting a daughter and maybe someday grandchildren, and it felt like our family was growing again after losing Tom. That's all I wanted too. I wanted to be part of your family. You are part of my family. You married my son. You're carrying my grandchild. She looked up at me with surprise. Ben told you about the baby? He told me yesterday. And Jessica, I'm so happy about the baby. But I'm also so sorry that you felt like you had to hide it from me. I wasn't hiding it because I was ashamed. I was hiding it because I was scared you'd take over that too. That hurt, but it was fair. Have I been that controlling? Not controlling exactly, just overwhelming. You have such strong opinions about how things should be done, and you have the money to make your opinions reality, and I felt like I was just along for the ride. We talked for 2 hours over coffee and sandwiches, and I learned more about my daughter-in-law in that conversation than I had in the previous 2 years. She told me about her childhood, how her mother had left when Jessica was 15 and never looked back. How she'd been raised by her grandmother, who died right before Jessica started nursing school. How she'd been working 2 jobs to support herself since she was 16. I've never had anyone want to take care of me, she said. When he started planning this elaborate wedding, part of me was excited because it felt like having a real mom for the first time, but part of me was scared because I didn't know how to be the kind of person who deserved something that fancy. Jessica, you deserve everything beautiful in this world. You work so hard, you're so kind, you make my son happy, you deserve to be celebrated. But I wanted to be celebrated for who I am, not turned into someone I'm not. What do you mean? The dress we picked out cost more than I made in 2 months. The venue you chose was the kind of place I'd never even feel comfortable walking into as a guest, let alone as a bride. The guest list was full of people I'd never met. It didn't feel like my wedding. It felt like I was being hired to play a bride in someone else's wedding. I sat there absorbing that, realizing how completely I'd missed the mark. "What would your dream wedding have looked like?" I asked her. "Honestly, maybe in your backyard or at the community center. Ben's close friends and whoever you wanted to invite from your side. A barbecue or potluck dinner where people could actually talk and get to know each other. Maybe some dancing afterward. Simple flowers, maybe just from your garden. A dress I could afford to buy myself, even if it was just something pretty from a regular store." That sounds beautiful. It would have been ours. And it would have been something I could help create instead of just showing up for. "Jessica, I owe you such an apology. I was so busy trying to give you what I thought you should want that I never asked what you actually wanted. And I should have been brave enough to tell you instead of just going along with everything and then resenting it." We both sat there, crying in that little cafe, and then Jessica said something that surprised me. "Anna, would you be willing to start over?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, we're married now, and that's not going to change. But what if we planned a blessing ceremony or reception that was actually what we both wanted? What if we did it together this time, as partners, instead of me just nodding along with your ideas?" "You'd want to do that? After everything that's happened?" "I'd love to do that. I want to celebrate being married to Ben. And I want to celebrate becoming part of your family. I just want to do it in a way that feels like me." "What about the money? I don't want you to feel pressured. What if we set a budget together and I contribute what I can and you contribute what you want to, and we plan something beautiful within those limits?" It was such a simple, reasonable solution that I couldn't believe we hadn't thought of it months earlier. "I would love that," I told her. "Really?" "Really, but Jessica, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If I start taking over again, if I start pushing for things you don't want, promise me you'll tell me right away. Don't let me steamroll you again." "I promise, but you have to promise me something too. Anything. Promise me you'll tell me when you have ideas, instead of just deciding things and expecting me to go along. I want to hear your thoughts, but I want to discuss them, not just accept them. I promise." And then she said something that made me cry all over again. "Anna, I want you to know that not having you at the wedding was the worst part of the whole day. I kept thinking about how you should have been there, how wrong it felt to be getting married without you. Ben felt the same way." "Then why?" "Because we were scared. We were scared that if we told you we wanted something different, you'd be disappointed in us. We were scared that if we told you about the baby, you'd make it all about being a grandmother instead of about us becoming parents. We were scared that we'd hurt your feelings if we asked you to tone things down. So instead, you just cut me out completely. It was supposed to be temporary. We were going to tell you everything after we got back from our little honeymoon, and then we were going to plan a reception together. We never meant for you to find out the way you did." "How did you think I was going to react when you told me?" "We hoped you'd be excited at being a grandmother and you'd understand why we did things the way we did. Instead, I felt betrayed and excluded and like I'd lost my son. I'm so sorry, Anna. I never wanted you to feel that way." We talked for another hour, making plans for a blessing ceremony in 6 weeks when Jessica would be showing but not too uncomfortable. We decided on my backyard, like she'd suggested. A simple buffet dinner. 50 people maximum. Jessica would buy her own dress, something she felt beautiful in. I would handle the flowers and decorations, but we'd choose them together. Most importantly, we'd plan it as a celebration of them, not as my vision of what their celebration should look like. When we were getting ready to leave the cafe, I reached into my purse and pulled out my grandmother's pearl necklace. "I brought this for you," I said, holding it out to her. "I can't take this. Not after everything that's happened. I want you to have it, not because you're supposed to wear it, but because you're my family now. This necklace has been in our family for 3 generations, and I want it to continue with you." She took it with trembling hands. "Thank you, Anna." Thank you for giving me another chance. Over the next 6 weeks, planning Jessica and Ben's blessing ceremony was everything planning their wedding hadn't been. We made decisions together. We compromised. We listened to each other. When I suggested something she wasn't comfortable with, she told me. When she had an idea I wasn't sure about, we talked it through until we found something we both liked. Ben joined us for planning sessions, and I got to see him relax in a way he hadn't during the original wedding planning. He made jokes, offered opinions, and seemed genuinely excited about the celebration we were creating. Jessica started showing right around the 5-month mark, just a little bump that made her glow with happiness. Watching her and Ben talk about the baby, about their plans and dreams and fears, reminded me why I'd been so excited about this wedding in the first place. They were so in love, so committed to each other, so ready to start their family together. 3 weeks before the blessing ceremony, Jessica asked if I wanted to go shopping with her for a dress. "I want your opinion," she said, "but I want to choose something that feels like me." We went to 3 different stores, and I kept my mouth shut while she tried on different options. Finally, she found a simple blue dress that skimmed her new curves beautifully and made her eyes sparkle. "What do you think?" she asked, turning in front of the mirror. "I think you look radiant," I told her honestly. She asked, "Is it not too simple?" "It's perfect." I replied, "You look like yourself, and even more." She smiled at herself in the mirror, and I could see that she actually felt beautiful, not just dressed up. "This is the one," she said. The night before the ceremony, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was anxious, but because I was so excited. I kept thinking about how different everything felt this time around. How collaborative and joyful the planning had been. How much I'd learned about Jessica and Ben, and about myself. The morning of the blessing ceremony was perfectly sunny, but not hot, with a gentle breeze that made the decorations flutter beautifully. Jessica had chosen simple white flowers mixed with greenery, and we'd strung lights through the trees in my backyard. It looked magical without being overdone. Jessica arrived 2 hours early to help set up, and seeing her in that blue dress, glowing with pregnancy and happiness, made me tear up all over again. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." "Thank you." "And Anna, thank you for all of this, for giving us another chance, for listening to us, for making this feel like ours. Thank you for being patient with me while I learned how to be a better mother-in-law." The ceremony itself was small and intimate, exactly what they'd wanted from the beginning. Ben's closest friends were there, along with my dearest friends from church and the business. Jessica's mother had driven down from Portland again, and this time I got to meet her properly. "Thank you for being there for them when I couldn't be," I told her. "Thank you for welcoming my daughter into your family," she replied. When the minister asked if there were any words to be shared, I stood up with something I'd prepared. "Jessica and Ben, I want to apologize to everyone here for the confusion that led to this celebration. When you first got married 6 weeks ago, I wasn't there. And that was my fault as much as it was yours." I looked at both of them, standing there holding hands in my garden. I thought I knew what your perfect wedding should look like. And I was wrong. I thought I was giving you a gift, but instead I was giving you a burden. I'm grateful that you gave me another chance to celebrate with you. And I'm grateful that this time, we created something together. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden, including mine. "Jessica, you are the daughter I never had, and you're going to be an amazing mother. Ben, you chose well, and I'm proud of the man you've become. And to everyone here, thank you for witnessing not just their love for each other, but our family's commitment to growing and learning and doing better." After the ceremony, we had dinner and danced just like Jessica had imagined. It was casual and fun and full of laughter. People actually talked to each other instead of just sitting formally through a program. Ben and Jessica looked relaxed and happy in a way they never had during the original wedding planning. Around 9 o'clock, Jessica found me in the kitchen cleaning up. "Anna, I have something to tell you." My heart jumped, thinking something was wrong with the baby. "What is it?" "We found out the gender yesterday. We wanted to tell you together. But Ben's outside talking to his cousin and I can't wait." "What are you having?" "A girl." I started crying immediately. "A granddaughter?" "A granddaughter," And Anna, we want to name her Anna Rose after you and my grandmother. I completely broke down then, crying so hard I couldn't speak. Does that mean you like it? Jessica asked, laughing through her own tears. I love it. I love it so much. We were hoping you might want to be in the delivery room with us. I know it's a lot to ask. Jessica Rose Campbell, I said, using her married name for the first time. There is nowhere else I would rather be. 6 months later, I was indeed in the delivery room when little Anna Rose made her appearance. She was perfect, with Ben's dark hair and Jessica's delicate features. When the nurse placed her in my arms, I felt like my heart might explode with joy. Hello, sweet girl, I whispered to her. I'm your Grandma Anna, and I promise I'm going to let you be exactly who you're meant to be. Looking back now, with my granddaughter crawling around my living room, and Jessica stopping by for coffee twice a week, and Ben calling just to chat, I realized that the disaster of their secret wedding was actually the best thing that could have happened to us. It forced us to be honest with each other. It made me confront the ways I was trying to control their lives instead of supporting their choices. It taught Jessica to speak up for herself and Ben to communicate instead of avoiding conflict. Most importantly, it showed all of us that love isn't about giving people what you think they should want. Love is about paying attention to what they actually need and finding ways to support that, even when it's different from what you imagined. If Jessica and Ben hadn't gotten married without me, I never would have learned these lessons. I would have kept steamrolling over their preferences, they would have kept resenting my interference, and we all would have been miserable, despite having the perfect wedding. Instead, we have something better than perfect. We are real. We are honest. We have a family that knows how to disagree and work through problems and come out stronger on the other side. And I have a daughter-in-law who trusts me enough to ask for my advice, a son who calls me just to tell me about his day, and a granddaughter who's going to grow up knowing that she's loved for exactly who she is. The secret wedding that broke my heart ended up healing it in ways I never expected. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be that saves you from yourself. And that pearl necklace? Jessica wore it to little Anna's baptism last month, and someday she'll pass it down to her daughter with the story of how sometimes families have to fall apart a little bit before they can come back together, stronger than ever. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever realized you were pushing your own dreams onto someone else instead of supporting theirs? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on family, weddings, and learning to listen to the people we love. Thanks for watching.